Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye calls for confidence and a return to Korea's can-do spirit to get the economy back on track. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe reshuffles his cabinet as he aims to revive the country's flagging economy and soothe divisions within his party. Plus, Iraq is expected to ask Russia to take on Islamic State militants on its soil as Moscow continues to pound targets in Syria. Stay tuned for these stories and more.
Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, October 8th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye is calling on Korea to restore its can-do attitude of the 1970s as a means to reinvigorate the economy. She stressed that confidence is the key to turning things around. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
President Park said that with the confidence it showed during its economic development, Korea can turn the current crisis into an opportunity. Speaking to her economic advisors on Wednesday, the president recalled the Semaul movement, an initiative that led the modernization of Korea's rural economy in the 1970s, noting that it has since become a policy that contributes to international prosperity. The OECD and the UNDP recently decided to benchmark the Korean initiative for developing nations. President Park also noted China's efforts for building a consumption-driven economy. This greatly affects Korea, as China accounts for a quarter of its exports. Despite the changes, the Korean leader said China still offers diverse opportunities, adding that Seoul should not only bolster efforts to stay ahead of its neighbor, but also find ways to grow together. Referring to the 17 creative economy innovation centers across the country, the president called for the need to provide all-out support for fresh ideas proposed by each center, adding that unjustified regulations must be lifted. The centers offer workspace funding and advice to startups and are part of the government's drive to ease economic reliance on conglomerates. President Park said that through such regulatory reform, Korea could produce another development model like the Semaul movement to help contribute to the improvement of other countries. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken says the U.S. is open to holding negotiations with Korea if Seoul wants to be part of the recently concluded Trans-Pacific Partnership. The visiting Deputy Secretary made the statement Wednesday at a seminar in Seoul, adding that he had initial discussions during his meetings with government officials here. He said the TPP members are looking forward to talks with Korea and other countries that want to join the partnership. Blinken refuted claims the pact is aimed at isolating China, saying Washington also welcomes Beijing's participation if the standards are met. He also touched upon North Korea's nuclear and missile programs during his lecture, warning that Pyongyang will face tougher sanctions if it pushes ahead with its long-range rocket launch. North Korea is believed to be in possession of up to 22 nuclear weapons as of the end of last year. Now, this is according to Washington-based Institute for Science and International Security, which said in its revised report on North Korea's nuclear stockpile that Pyongyang is presumed to have enough uranium and plutonium to build between 15 and 22 nuclear bombs. The institution said, given that Pyongyang used plutonium during its most recent nuclear test in 2013, some 30 to 34 kilograms of separated plutonium would be left over. In terms of uranium, it estimated North Korea has around 240 kilograms of enriched uranium, presuming the country is operating 2 centrifugal separator facilities and around 100 kilograms if it is operating 1 facility. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has brought some fresh faces into his cabinet, replacing half of the current 18 members. The shake-up appears to be an attempt to soothe party divisions. Lee Soo-eun reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is set to reshuffle at least half of his cabinet. In a press briefing on Wednesday, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga announced a third new Abe cabinet list. Of the 18 cabinet seats, Prime Minister Abe is keeping his close allies in what's considered the 9 backbone positions of his administration. Finance Minister Taro Aso, Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, Defense Minister Nakatani Gen, and the Chief Secretary himself are among the 9 to keep their portfolios. Some new faces are expected, as the briefing revealed that the former Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato will head a newly formed ministerial post for tackling demographic issues such as the country's falling birth rate and growing elderly population. Abe will also appoint Moto Hayashi, who used to chair a steering committee of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party's lower house, as a new Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry. The partial reshuffle is seen as an attempt to shift focus away from the controversial security legislation enacted last month amid fierce opposition and put the economy and diplomacy at the front line of his cabinet. Abe is also said to have considered his flagging support rate in preparation of a lower house election scheduled for next year's July. Isuin, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's rival political parties are mired in a long-running debate over whether to adopt a single state-authored history textbook. Supporters of the idea say it would help revise and correct ideological bias. Ji Myung-gil reports.
With the ruling Saenuri Party backing the idea, debate continues with civic groups, academia, and the main opposition party opposed to government being in charge of publishing history textbooks. The ruling Saenuri Party says that among the multiple history textbooks, most are just too ideologically biased.
The current textbooks are brainwashing students with leftist ideology and negative views of our history. Some history textbooks are written in a way that seems to justify socialist ideas, like introducing North Korea's Juche, self-reliance ideology.
Currently, 8 private publishers produce the textbooks after gaining government approval. Middle and high schools can then choose any of the 8 publishers' books. Conservative groups support the government's plan, but civic groups and academia oppose it. They say the proposed system has a high possibility of teaching historical viewpoints and ideologies in a way that suits only the government. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy says the government is trying to challenge democratic values.
The move to make state-authored history textbooks is the same as trying to go back to authoritarian times when everything was censored. We won't allow the government and the Saenuri Party to meddle with historical interpretation.
The MPAD says the unified view given by a standardized textbook can censor people's perception of history and their way of thinking. However, Education Minister Hwang Woo-yeol reiterated his position given during last month's parliamentary inspection that history textbooks should be neutral, signaling the government's push for a single state-authored textbook. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, after 13 years and almost a dozen failed attempts, the Korean government has finally agreed on a policy that requires cigarette packs to carry graphic images showing the harmful effects of smoking. Oh Soo-young reports.
Starting from December next year, the Korean government will require all cigarette makers to label packs and boxes with graphic health warning images. The Health Ministry said Wednesday that specific regulations have been set in the revised National Health Promotion Act, which was enacted in May this year. Under the new law, graphic warning labels must cover at least 30% of the main front and back surfaces. Combined with text warnings, the label should take up no less than 50% of the pack's design. With this policy, Korea will follow the provisions of the World Health Organization's Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which requires member nations to cover at least 30% of the main surfaces with strong and graphic warnings. In the last decade, almost 70 parties of the convention adopted pictorial warning policies, each with varying standards on the size of the labels. Among them, Thailand requires the highest percentage of warning label coverage at 85% on both front and back surfaces. Australia comes second with a quota of 75% for the front and 90% for the back. In Korea, the labelling regulations will be applied on all types of tobacco-related products, including e-cigarettes, pipes, cigars, chewing and smokeless tobacco, each with their own relevant warnings according to their respective health risks. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, Iraq is expected to call on Russia to take over the lead from the United States in the fight against the Islamic State group. A senior Iraqi defense official told Reuters on Wednesday that the issue is being forced upon the country. It's not yet clear whether Moscow is interested in extending its airstrikes beyond Syria. The Kremlin says it has not received any official requests from Baghdad for Russian help. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry has released a video that you're seeing now showing its military forces firing rockets off the deck of a warship in the Caspian Sea. Officials say 4 warships targeted Islamic State targets in Syria with 26 missile strikes. As well as that, activists say Syrian and Russian military forces carried out their first major coordinated assault on Syrian rebels on Wednesday in the northern part of Hama province. In Europe, the leaders of Germany and France have called for Europe to show unity to tackle a slew of crises that have rocked the continent. In a rare address to the EU Parliament on Wednesday, Angela Merkel and François Hollande spoke about boosting cooperation to control the flow of refugees, strengthening the economy and ways to confront challenges from Russia as well as from the Islamic State group. Now, given the multitude of issues, Merkel said Europe was facing a test of historic proportions. Hollande also warned of a, quote, total war between sectarian rivals in the Middle East that would reach Europe without international efforts to stop the fighting in Syria. More Nobel Prize winners were announced on Wednesday. A team of 3 scientists won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for making important discoveries that could be used in the development of new cancer treatments.
The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has decided to award the 2015 Nobel Prize in Chemistry jointly to Thomas Lindahl, Paul Modrich, and Aziz Sanyar for mechanistic studies of DNA repair.
Now, according to the Royal Swedish Academy of Scientists, our DNA is damaged every day by a number of things, such as the sun and cigarette smoke. The scientists who won the award discovered how cells repair themselves and protect that genetic information. Now, autumn is regarded as the season for reading here in Korea, and other than the falling leaves and temperatures, another prominent sign that fall is here is the opening of various book fairs. Among them is the Seoul International Book Fair, which has been going strong for more than 20 years now. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korea is well known for exporting its cultural content, including K-pop music and TV dramas. But how about its books? Answering this question is the focus of the 21st Annual Seoul International Book Fair, which opened on Wednesday.
The fair enables readers, writers, and publishers from all over the world to come together in appreciation of all kinds of books, including illustrated children's books.
Such children's books are seen as most likely to hit overseas bookshelves. The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly by Hwang Sun-mi is a case in point. Since its release in Korea, it has sold more than 1.6 million copies over the past 13 years. It was made into an animated movie in 2011 and also translated into an English version. Within a month of its release, the English version became the best-selling illustrated book in major bookstores in Britain.
Although all the main characters of the book are animals, readers tend to easily relate to the story as if it's of a friend or parent. When readers start to do that, it doesn't really matter whether the story is from another country. It becomes universal.
The event is sponsored by the Culture Ministry, which hopes to provide support for the country's publishing and book industries.
It goes without saying that books are the foundation for creativity, which serves as an important competitive drive in today's society. This is why the government is vowing to support the development of the publishing industry, so that it can play a vital role in cultural development.
18 countries are also on display at the fair, which runs through Sunday. Kim Jian, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you, as always, for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye.